Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Power of Man podcast. My name is Rory Paquette. I am, as always, your very grateful host. You guys all know that. Here we are today, another magnificent day. And, every day that you wake up is a good one at this point. So I really appreciate all of you folks coming in, listening, sharing the whole nine yards. The reason that I get to sit here and do what I'm doing is because you're out there doing what you're doing. And I want you all to know how much I appreciate it. We keep bringing you really good content. We bring you powerful men from all over the world, and we bring you a lot of different viewpoints, different topics, and we try to keep it interesting. I am very, very looking forward to talking to this gentleman today about everything he has to say. I think he's got a couple of, maybe little different outlooks on some things that I really wanted to bring to you guys. So I am looking forward to this conversation very much. We don't have a sponsor today. So I'm just going to drink my coffee all on my own for those of you who normally listen to the program. Good stuff. Deep, dark, rich, bold, and beautiful, just like my wife. We're not going to do the rest of the ad today, though. Sorry. That's just not how it goes. Everybody's going, man, you're not going to do the whole big speech? No, not today. One more sip of coffee, though. All right. I will be drinking that throughout the entire thing. So deal with it. Here we go. Please welcome to the program. And let me give you a little bit about this gentleman. All right. He's got a degree in anthropology. He works with kids. He's an educator in that way. He has a podcast that he's the host of, social science podcast, The Holy Spirit's Curriculum of Joy. He's got 204 episodes, so he's been doing this for a minute. Please welcome to the podcast, Wanako Oberhuber. Did I get it?
Yes,
Did I get it? Welcome to the show, sir. I've been mispronouncing this man's first name like all morning long. So, sir, welcome to the show. How are you doing this morning?
I'm okay. A little cold, but otherwise fine.
Cold. Where are you calling in from today?
I'm in Austria.
You're in Austria. I had no
Yes,
idea. Oh my gosh. Okay, so it's cold there.
yes. The spring hasn't picked up its pace yet very much. So on
Holy
days
cow.
like this, it's cold.
I had no idea you were calling from that far away, but thank you for joining us this morning. So it must be a pretty big time difference all the way out to there from where we are here.
Yeah, well, you're East Coast, right? So it's 6 hours difference
My goodness. Okay, great. Are you ahead of us or behind us?
ahead.
You're ahead. Okay, so it's the middle of your day right now.
Yes.
All right, good. I'm like, man, I hope you're not behind us because that would be a little brutal. All right. Well, listen, I am really eager to hear about the podcast and about your take on some of these things we talked about. I know you've got some quotes out there. All are infinitely valuable in the mind of God is one that I know you've put out. The podcast itself is I can't wait to hear about it. And so let me just start with this question, which I'm sure you're going to be okay with. How did you come to see the world in the way that you do today?
Yes, that's a question I love asking. And one could take a lot of time to answer it.
Go for it.
So yeah, well, my worldview has changed over time due to my willingness to encounter the various stages in my life and the things that changed because I've lived in a few countries. I've I've encountered difficulties, plenty of them, and becoming a parent changed me as well. So there's so many things that changed. And one of the things that has helped me as well is A Course in Miracles, which is a book which I also loved. That quote comes from. All are infinitely valuable in the mind of God, whereby the book sounds very Christian when you use the words, the terminology in it, but
Hmm.
the content is actually psychological because the writers were psychologists, and so it's actually very sound psychological reasoning in the whole book,
Hmm.
and so that's why I love it so much.
Sounds interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, and things like that, like all are infinitely valuable in the mind of God, is very important because we tend to, as men, as women, as whoever, we tend to undervalue ourselves and undervalue each other. So attempting to accept that we are infinitely valuable is quite a challenge for us in our lives. And I think that's very important when we are facing challenges as parents as well, because we we tend to, oh, our child is really mad at us. Okay, now I'm mad at myself. I'm so bad and blah. And so staying focused on being valuable, independent of what is going on in your life is has been a huge lesson. Not that I manage every time, but it's at least I attempt to learn from that idea that we are infinitely valuable in order to face things differently.
Nice. Nice. So that quote really is important to you. That sounds like you identify with that very strongly.
I've decided that it's important because it's also a way of being a host on the podcast. I want my guests to recognize that they're valued, right?
I do the same thing here. I understand completely. I usually end with that. I,
So
I say flat out, you have value, you matter.
yeah. Well,
So
then we
yeah.
have the same idea.
Yeah, no, I love that. I mean, it's
Uh,
ringing true. Absolutely.
That's why every story and every sharing is so valuable. And that's something I also speak about in the podcast sometimes when I speak about how some people don't dare to come up with what they have to say.
Hmm.
And then I say, okay, where you are at is where you can teach best, not from where you think you should be or where you were in the past, but where you're at is exactly where you should be. Because when I started the podcast, I had to also recognize that it's valuable because I know that I have ideas that maybe I should be there or I should be like that person or I should be this or that, right? And I'm not, right? I'm where I'm at. And to value that has been very important for the journey of podcasting as well, or being a guest on podcasts.
Hmm. Man, interesting. Okay. You're tell me about the podcast. How'd you get started doing that?
Yeah, that's a good one. So I started working with audio and visual content during my studies of anthropology. We we had this group, we called it the Media Anthropology Group. And at some point I couldn't write for a while. My hands were just hurting too much, my arms.
Hmm.
And then I said, okay, well, we can switch to audio. Why not do a radio show or something? And then we started researching and learning the methods and how to cut audio content. And we did a little video as well, content. And we brought out a show to share about anthropology and what it's all about. And we were students, right? So we were daring to go out there and speak about it as students and not as people who had finished the degree yet. But we did interview people like our professors and other experts as well.
Interesting. That's how it started.
That's how I started doing audio
Okay.
content.
That's how the
Later,
content started. Gotcha. Okay.
but later on, the podcast came a lot later. The podcast that I'm doing now, I I moved from where I was at with the radio show to a different city, and then I wasn't working with the same people anymore. And then at some point I got to know A Course in Miracles and started being interested in that. And then I got this inner message or drive, you could say, you're a teacher of A Course in Miracles. And I was like, I haven't read the book yet. What am I to do now? Okay, I better read the book first.
What happened to teaching from where you are, not where you want to be?
Yeah, I wasn't it was hard for me to accept it myself, right?
Yeah.
So so yeah,
Well,
that would
sometimes
have
you have to
been
just start. I understand.
yeah, so I just got interested in reading it and experienced all kinds of things over the years, and I started writing about it, like short messages on Facebook was one of the ways I did it.
Okay.
They were very poetic because I have been writing in the past as well. It was not just before, I didn't start with A Course in Miracles.
Okay.
Yeah,
Excellent.
and So that was very interesting. And I did that about 3 years or a little more. I was actually posting almost daily. So some nice messages to help get more insight into one's life and how one can have an outlook that is helpful and use the ideas from A Course in Miracles.
Hmm.
Not that I was capable of it all the time, but you do teach what you want to learn. As A Course in Miracles says, if you teach what you want to learn, you're going to learn
All
it.
right. You keep talking about the Course in Miracles. So explain to my listeners, what is the Course in Miracles exactly? Where did it come from? What is that actually about? Since, I mean, it is a cornerstone of what you're working with here.
Yeah, A Course in Miracles, like I said, is a book. It
Hmm.
was written by Helen Schuckman, and she was supported by another man who was helping her with that. So they call him the co-scribe.
Okay.
Um, and he was called Bill Thetford. They were both psychologists at Columbia, I think it was Columbia University or something. And they were very prominent people. And they had this huge these fights within the faculty, and then since Bill Thetford was the boss there, he was like, "This, there must be another way to do this. This can't be the way it goes." And and Helen Schuckman said, "Okay, I'll help you find that." And then she
Okay.
started getting these visions and things, and then at some point she actually started getting these messages within. She didn't describe it as hearing a voice, but that it was a voice.
Hmm.
So
Interesting.
so it was like dictation from within without hearing it actually, but just
Wow.
sensing it, or I don't know how she describes it herself and anyways, that book came about. She was uncertain about the message because she was not Christian. She didn't have it wasn't easy for her to have Christian terminology in a book she was getting through her and
Okay.
so on. And then so she went to her boss, Bill Thetford, and spoke about it. And then he said he'll help her. Let it come through, even if it sounds crazy. We'll figure out whether it's crazy or not afterwards. Let's just get going. And then she would write it in shorthand, and he would type it out.
Nice.
And
And this is something that you teach now,
well,
or that you did.
being a teacher of A Course in Miracles is not necessarily teaching exactly what's written in it. It's about um, using the ideas in your life. And
I see.
so you can be a teacher who does it like a scholar and just quotes everything and speaks with that. But the
Sure.
idea in A Course in Miracles is it's all about an experience, not about the words. So it says, it has a short passage at the beginning that's supposed to say everything. And then you have a book like, I don't know, so many pages, and a workbook and a manual for teachers and everything. But
Interesting.
that little quote is enough to describe the whole book.
Okay.
So it says actually, if you understand that, you wouldn't even need to read the book. And
Excellent.
at the
Excellent.
end, it also says, okay, drop the book and come to God as you are. So again, the idea of being where you are at and being honest with yourself.
There it is again. Right on. Okay. Excellent. Okay. So I mean, I guess, what are some of the main points that, you use to sort of teach a course in the Book of Miracles?
Yeah, well, one of the things is joining. That's very important to me, and that's something I do through the podcast as well, is because we are sharing together. And the guests get to share it in whatever way they want, but they don't have to have A Course in Miracles.
Okay.
Because, like I said, one of the very important qualities of a teacher of God, as they call it, the teacher of a Course in Miracles, or a teacher of truth or love or whatever you want to call it,
Hmm.
is to be open-minded. And so that means you don't have to get stuck up about the terminology or anything. It's about the message. And that's something that A Course in Miracles says within its pages as well. Don't get stuck up about the words or the
Wow.
terminology. It's all about the message. So listen to people. So if you take that, turn that around, you can say, listen to people to understand them rather than to judge them. And it's all about forgiveness as well. So forgiveness in A Course in Miracles is something different than forgiveness traditionally is. Like in traditional forgiveness, one thinks one has to pardon people.
Right.
And in A Course in Miracles, it's about changing one's mind about things. So
Hmm.
seeing people as holy, and that's why the quote of "we are all infinitely valuable in the mind of God" is another thing that points out to that, is that we all are holy or sinless or whatever the course. There's these different words that A Course in Miracles uses to describe it, but I think it's just we are all beautifully shining beings, and we should honor that. This is the basic message. And as I was saying before, the book came about because of wanting to resolve the way of working that they had together of fighting all the time. But it became something much bigger.
Sounds like it. Yeah. So in terms of the looking at things through the lens of forgiveness, and like you said, and of pardoning, that's when you're looking at someone else in terms of forgiveness and stuff. But this sounds more like you're looking within it yourself and forgiving yourself. Am I getting that right?
Let's put it this way. You there all there is what you see is all there because of the way you interpret it. You get the feelings that come up and everything comes through the way you interpret everything. So if you change the way you interpret things, the whole idea changes, the whole experience changes. So when you look at someone and you only see a criminal, then that's what you'll see. But if you start going into, okay, I'm willing to look at it with different eyes, see it differently, then things open up and you start seeing something else.
Hmm.
And that's also
Wow.
and that has to do with the changing your mind about yourself as well. But and if you want to take it, it's also changing your mind about authority, about power, about who you are, about what you are allowed to feel or experience. Because we tend to get all stuck up about, okay, I can't feel that way because that's evil or that's good or so on. It's all about letting go of these judgments and remembering who we actually are. And in A Course in Miracles, it says we are love. So that's something we can't teach. That's who we are. So we can only remove the blocks to the awareness of love's presence because love is always present. It never disappeared or never went away. So we tend
Hmm.
to get in our own way. And so that's why it says there's something within us, or there's this instance within us. It's called the Holy Spirit in A Course in Miracles, but that's just words. The
Okay.
meaning of it is much deeper. There is uh, something in us that is informed. It knows who we are, and it can guide us and can remove blocks to the awareness of love's presence if we are willing. So we have to be willing. We do have to make a choice. Do I want to listen to the voice that joins us, or do I want to listen to a voice that's going to get us fighting all the time?
I see. I see. And that goes back to why they created the book in the first place.
Yes,
I understand.
exactly.
I starting to see the full circle here idea.
Yeah.
So all right, I got
And
you.
yeah, so the idea of separation, or is they call it in the course, it's called the ego. That it's always it's an idea of separation. So we're not whole, we're not one with our source or with who we are. And
Hmm.
the idea of wholeness is the one of the Holy Spirit. So like I said, it's Christian terminology, but it's not Christian in nature. I mean,
Right.
it does help if you're a Christian to understand Christian faith. You can go deeper with it through it, but because of the deepness of the psychology behind it, it actually is helpful, even in religious ideas. But it's not only that. That's why people from all kinds of walks of life and faiths can feel comfortable with A Course in Miracles once they get past the idea that this terminology determines what it means, right?
Wow.
Because it doesn't.
Yeah. I mean, that's the whole idea about having to be open-minded when you walk into it, it sounds like.
Yes.
Yeah. Interesting. Wow. Now, is your podcast, does your podcast cover this also, or does the podcast have a different purpose? I'm just curious.
Well, the podcast started out with a focus on A Course in Miracles,
Hmm.
but I, like I said, for me, it's all about the message.
Right.
So I'm not stuck up about it. So I have guests who have no idea what the book is as well,
Okay.
because it's all about the message, and I want people to be able to share what they have to say. And if it's a loving message, it's wonderful. If it's helpful for us to understand each other and join in more ways than we have, I'm all up for it.
So the podcast is still following the principles of Course in Miracles in itself, in that it wants to, join people together and remain open-minded and remind everybody that we're made out of love.
Yes, I guess that would be a good way of putting it.
Am I close? All right.
But it's also like I said, a social science podcast. So it's also geared to show how diverse we are, and how, and yet at the same time we all are one or have a common purpose. And in A Course in Miracles, it says the only thing that people can agree on is that we all want to be perfectly happy. It's-
That's safe. That is a safe statement right there. That's true. All right. Excellent. Um, wow. Okay. I love this. It's very, very interesting. Now you do a lot of work with kids. Do you do that work through this Course of Miracles, or is that a different, curriculum and what work do you do with kids?
Okay, I work in nurseries, kindergartens, and daycare.
Okay.
So after school stuff
Uh,
as well.
I see.
So it's not the education that I do there is not A Course in Miracles, even if we are all free to have our own views on things. So I can see the world and be informed by ideas from A Course in Miracles if I want, but the methodology is not coming from a book. And
Right.
anyways, the book, not that book at least.
Sure.
I can so you can inform the way you educate or the way you work with kids from that viewpoint that we all are infinitely valuable in the mind of God, for instance, or or that teach what you want to learn, right? So if I want to learn to be kind, I need to be kind.
True. True.
And things like that. So I can use those ideas to help me choose what I will what I will do, but it will not tell me what to do. The course doesn't tell you what to do.
Gotcha.
It's not that type of book.
Got it. The now your opening line to people on your podcast. How did you come to see the world in the way that you do today? We talk to a lot of fathers in this program. You're a father of two. How did becoming a father change, possibly, or enforce the way that you see the world today?
Yeah, well, it certainly changed everything. I couldn't be the same person I was before. I loved children beforehand, but then having your own children just let me open up because I know that I had these fears about working with children, and and having my own children helped me overcome that.
Hmm,
And then I started to get into the career of working with children, which I wouldn't, and there still are a lot of resistance in society to men working with young children.
sure.
So so I had to overcome my fears of that, and then through the work with children, and having my own children, I had to overcome a whole lot of things that were difficult for me. And even if we're speaking of taking care of hygiene or things like that with very young children, that's something where I had a lot of resistance as a father, and I had to learn that
Hmm.
it's okay. Yeah, they need it. A child needs the help with the
Right.
hygiene, and that's why I do it. Not and the beauty that that comes from that is that you start to let go of all of these inhibitions and seeing things differently, like seeing the child as valuable, even though it's stinking, right? Yeah, you have to overcome that idea that something that stinks is not valuable, needs to be thrown in the trash, right?
Right.
You throw away the the what they get rid of, but like poop and so on and pee, but you do not throw away the whole thing because they that's something that happens. It's the same with ourselves, of course. But anyways, there's all these areas that I needed to overcome and learn to cherish because you can actually realize that a lot of connection happens when you are helping someone, you're serving them, and that's not always obvious. So
Wow.
even
Yeah.
serving in those ways are helps us connect.
Wow. Are they younger children at this point, or have they,
Not
grown
anymore.
and gone? They're grown now. All right. So you've been
Not
through this for
grown
a little
yet.
while.
Not grown yet, but they're
They're up
teenagers
there.
now.
Ah, okay. Got you. I
But
remember
but
those
I
years.
went through that.
Yeah. You know what? Value it while it's there, my friend, because I'm an empty nester, and there's nothing worse than being an empty nester, to be honest with you. You spend your whole life, raising the people that you absolutely, love more than anything and can't live without to live without you. And then they do.
Yes.
And you go, oh, good, it worked. And great. Now here I am without them. It's really awful. So
Hmm.
hang in.
That
Enjoy it while
that's
you can.
something I will be experiencing when the time comes, which is probably not far off.
Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, it's hard to imagine, but yes, you're right. That's something will be coming up.
Yeah.
And so, but I do work with children, so as long as I work with children, I will have children around me, but it
That's
won't
true.
be, but it won't necessarily be my own.
Yeah.
So
That might soften the blow a little bit. You might be okay. You
I don't
might be all
know.
right.
I
Yeah.
might not.
I hear
Yes,
you.
I guess it will be a blow when the kids are out of the house. And yeah. But anyways, the beauty of is that all these parts of being a parent are ways in which we learn to connect in ways that we wouldn't have imagined ourselves connecting before. Because you love these children so much, and you would have never imagined that you could be as selfless as you become toward because of your children. That's
100%.
something I was not aware of that was in me, right?
Wow. Um, that's interesting. I like what you just said there. You didn't know that that was in you, but your children brought that out in you.
Yes.
Interesting. Okay. Do you mind me asking in what ways? I mean, because that's a very big statement. I love that you made it because I think a lot of guys feel that way, but not everybody really understands what they're feeling in that way to put it into words like you just did. But I mean that speaks volumes.
Well, maybe I would like to, when child, our first child came to the world, that was mind blowing. The joy, but also and having so much joy but then being totally exhausted because I was holding the child all night.
Right.
And that was very exhausting as well, right?
Right.
But the joy was so tremendous that I hadn't even I mean, I've had experiences of great joy before, but this was like beyond all of that because it was with an actual living being that I had sired, right? So it was like, oh my God. And I And that's something that you can't pretend or make up or whatever. It's there. When it's there, it's like the whole world changes.
Yeah.
And I can't deny that. It's simply my experience. And yeah, and that's why I say you become selfless in ways that you couldn't beforehand. I mean, not that I wasn't selfless in other areas or in
Well,
other
of
ways.
course, sure.
There was something there, but it was like, oh my God, this is a totally different level of things.
I think that's kind of where I was going right there. It's I know that when I had mine, that feeling of, I had no idea that I could feel this way about another living, creature.
Exactly.
It's deeper, it's stronger, it's more ridiculous than anything you've ever encountered. And it's hard to explain to people who don't have children,
Yeah.
because
And
until you do, you don't even know you have that depth.
that's what I meant. Yeah. And
Yeah.
even a love relationship, it's not the same thing. It's something else entirely.
Yeah.
It
Yeah.
may have the same source, but it's a very different feeling.
Yeah. Very much so. Very much so. Yeah. I mean, I definitely would, self-sacrifice for my wife. But yeah, when it comes to the kids, man, it's a different ballgame. It's a whole different thing. I love that you said that way. Thanks for putting that in such a concise, nugget for everybody. I know there's a lot
You're
of
welcome.
men out there who are hearing that. Like I said, we have a lot of fathers, we have a lot of husbands, who listen to this program. And I think sometimes we forget that, to be honest. We get so wrapped up in our daily, and we get wrapped up in how tired I am from being up all night. And we get wrapped up in, how exhausted and how much I've given and, everything else that, you get a little jaded to the feeling, that you had at the beginning. It's still there. You just have to kind of, remember that it's still there as life
Yeah,
goes on.
that's true, and that's something that is very we can't we can't hold on to it. We would love to do that. I would. Is if I could be in that joy all the time, I probably would be a lot more relaxed about things.
There you go.
But we can't hold on to things, and that's why we need to come from where we are at the moment. And but
There you
yes,
go.
the joy is still there. It's like A Course in Miracles says, your love. You can't change that, right? You can't teach it. It's there. The
Yeah.
question is, what is keeping you from experiencing that, right? How can you choose to experience more of that? Because it's there at every moment. It's not just when a child is born or this and that. We think it is. We often think, a certain action or a certain experience is where it comes from. But the capacity to have that feeling is there from the beginning on.
Hmm.
And so we're actually discovering some things about ourselves in every situation that we actually had no idea was there. And that's the same for every moment in life,
Hmm.
whether we're in that top joy space or in a terrible space, which we've all been in.
Sure.
So the yes, you're right about becoming more open about it and speaking about it and sharing about it because that makes a huge difference. I remember, when you get married, have a child, there's often huge issues with with one's partner, and many people tend to say, no, I have no problems. Everything went so wonderfully well and so on. And it was so refreshing when one of my friends was like, no, I almost lost our relationship because of it, right? And to be honest about how hard that is. And certain times in life are that way. And so that to keep the faith, I'm using the word faith, but I mean, trusting that there is a way for everyone, right? And I think that's one of the messages that we can take from A Course in Miracles as well. There is the Holy Spirit. There is that within us that knows how to move on. And we need to have faith that that is there. And and even in the worst times in our lives, that is an important recognition. Okay, there is a way, and I can choose to. say, okay, I don't know what it is, but it's there. And I can
Nice.
trust, I can have faith in that, that it's there, even if I have no idea what it is.
What
Yeah.
do you what do you say to men who are hearing everything you're saying right now, and are going, yeah, I'd like to get back there. I really would. And I get that it's there, and it's there for me to get back to, possibly, or even a new version of it. But I just can't. We talked earlier. I can't get out of my own way. Right? How do you start
Yeah.
getting out of your own way to get back to that original, feeling, or even, an evolutionized, newer feeling that's similar, something down the road.
Yeah. Well, one of the first step is being honest about where you're at. And it may sound counterintuitive, but the actually recognizing where I'm at and be recognizing that I'm not alone. To see, one of the big lessons for me in life was I thought I was the only one thinking the way I was thinking. And
Mm,
I had to open up to the idea there might be other people thinking that way, right? Having
right.
similar experience and thoughts and insights that could be helpful to me, and mine could be helpful to them. And so once I made that decision that I wasn't alone, I actually, at first I would like, oh, there might be a few people, right? Maybe one or the other, right? But with time, I realized there's a lot more than that. But at the beginning, it was like, open, okay, there might be a book about it, or there might be something there. And once I was willing to engage with that idea that I'm not alone with these ideas, that there's others who think with that, I started discovering things that I had never seen before. I had this insight that imagination is real, that there's something real about it, really important, and that it's important, and that what I imagine is powerful, and so on. And then, my dreams, my thoughts, everything is really important. And I was like, I thought I was the only one thinking that because everyone's saying, oh, it's fantasy. You know, it's not going to help you with life and so on. And then I discovered, when I started recognizing there might be other people who have that type of insight or so on, that I discovered a book or a book or two, which were like, yes, it can actually transform your life by going on what other people call imagination on journeys in shamanism, for instance. You go on a journey,
Mm,
it's all going on in your head. It's or in your mind or whatever you want to call it. It's not physical, right? And it's not something that you're taking in your hand and grabbing like a chair or something. It's actually going on in your mind. You're meeting, you might be meeting other beings or whatever, in shamanism, it could be a power animal. There's many different ways that
wow.
goes. And it actually transforms people's lives because they actually have this encounter. They share what they want, their wishes or their worries with that being, for instance, even if it's in their mind. It may not even be an actual human being next to them, but they're actually speaking about it, they're sharing about it, and they're asking for help. And this huge step of asking for help, which is something that A Course in Miracles emphasizes as well, asking the Holy Spirit for help, for instance, right? That which within us knows what to do, right? Or how to proceed or how to see things actually is even better put.
Mm,
And so that actually is a way of being honest with yourself. If you don't dare to do it by stating the obvious, like I'm not able to buy what I want if I'm poor or whatever reason, maybe you can choose to look at it using your imagination because that is powerful enough to change things. It may be just a little willingness, as A Course in Miracles says, you need a little willingness that, that things could happen. Well, you might show a little willingness by looking within and saying, okay, whoa, it looks really dark at this moment. But look, I'm calling for help, and this little bit of light is showing up, a little bit of just one little thought of, okay, it might be possible that this could change. Doesn't have to be this way. maybe I'm misinterpreting things,
Mm.
right? Maybe there is a door in the wall, or maybe there is a tunnel, or whatever, right? And this recognition that I can accept that help, even if it's from within me and it's real. The thing is, to think that it's not real is where you might get caught up. But just let go of the idea that it's not real and just engage with it independently. You can leave that thought for later to look at it afterwards. But just choose to walk into that space and ask for that help. And whether you start by a little idea like mine that, okay, I'm not alone. I may not be alone. Maybe there's others. It might be the only thought you need to move on, right? The first thought to get the your feet moving in a direction that will help you.
I I love that. What an answer. That was such a great answer to that question. I had no idea where you were going to go with it. And a couple times you did some of this, and I was like, but man, you really pulled it together. That was a great answer to that question. Thank you for that. Holy cow. All right. I mean, we've got the podcast, The Holy Spirit's Curriculum of Joy. You got 204 episodes for people to dig into. Um, eh, Wanako, do me a favor and just tell everybody, is there anything? I'm going to give you the floor for the last couple of minutes. That last answer kind of just knocked me over. So I'm just like, all right, let me regather what's going on. I need a sip of coffee, I think, to get back together here. But I loved it, and just in the interest of time, we're going to go ahead and kind of wrap things up. And I want to make sure that I give you the floor for a few minutes. Is there anything I didn't ask you about, which is possible because our conversation was awesome, and you just went with it everywhere, and I appreciate that very much. Anything I didn't ask you about that you want to make sure you bring up? Anything that maybe we did bring up, but you want to drive home a little more? Or, a nugget to leave behind for everybody? Or, what? All three. Take your time. The floor is yours for the last couple of minutes. What do you got, sir?
Well, I'll continue with one idea is that we all have important things to share, and what we have to share is important for other people. Out of the same idea that I mentioned before, we're not alone. So if you recognize that you're not alone, you will also recognize that what you have to give is important to other people because there's other people who need it. And that's why I say, everyone who wants to share a message of love, of hope, and cherish who they are and each other, that's really important. And one of the ways to do that is being on podcasts, right? Or on other ways of sharing what you have to give. Because giving what you want, like I was saying, teaching what you want to learn or giving what you want to have, that's how you have it. In A Course in Miracles, it says you can only have what you give, right? So the thoughts that you give are the ones that you're going to keep. So if you want to share the thoughts in any way, you're also welcome on the podcast that I publish, but on any other podcast like here as well. I'm pretty sure that guests who want to share whatever it is, even fathers who are going through difficult times, are welcome because
Absolutely.
we all can learn from that.
Yeah.
And even if it goes to the point where we might cry openly, I think that's an important thing is if we get to that point, it's okay. But if we're not, I do not say that I want people to enforce that because that's something that I was always told, yeah, you better cry. It must be this and that, right? And I was like, no, I'm not in the mood to cry at this point. When it comes, it comes. Then my tears flow. And they flow like crazy, right? And if I and and the same with words and with whatever else we have to share. When it's there, and it's welcome. And to welcome what is there, that's what's so important. So it's an open invitation if anyone wants to come and join the podcast that I publish, join while I speak with someone else and comment or ask questions, then you have to be okay with it being published, of course, if you comment during a recording or ask questions.
Right.
And if you're a guest, obviously.
For sure.
So, so yeah, so you're You're welcome to come on and join in this venture to get to know each other and to get to know ourselves, actually, because by getting to know each other, we're recognizing who we are ourselves. And like I said, I think one of the most important messages is we all can understand each other if we decide that that is so. Because we've been taught that we can't understand each other. I at least I had that belief that nobody understood me.
Hmm.
So I was alone with my ideas, and the only person who understood them was me. And even that was difficult.
Wow. Yeah.
And so this recognition that I'm understood, like here, you're listening to what I have to say, and you can you can recognize things that make sense to you as well in what I'm saying. And that's something that is so important for us to recognize. And I think that's one of the things that we can gain through sharing or giving what we want to have, which is are the thoughts we cherish most. Let's put it that way, have helped us most, for instance, and the fears that have been blocking us from being happy and recognizing that they're there
Nice.
and recognizing each other in our struggles and joys.
Nice. I love that, you can only have what you're willing to give. That that says a lot. That says a whole lot. It really
That's one
does.
of the messages that A Course in Miracles puts a lot of emphasis on. And I think it's very important to recognize that. And not that you want to, it's not asking you to give what you don't want to give. It's asking you to give what you enjoy, what
Mhm.
gives you, maybe you don't even know what it is. Actually, sharing what you're very, very, very unhappy about is also a gift. Because I also thought that if I share how awful I'm feeling and so on, I'm going to burden people. And to recognize that that's not necessarily true. There may be people you
Mhm.
may have people who will say, "Get out of my way, you're too negative," or whatever, right? But there are that may be because may have various reasons, right? That they react that way, but that doesn't mean that that's the way it has to be. So there, yeah. So I've learned a lot by recognizing, yeah, even coming from a negative space doesn't mean that I'm not meant to share, that I have to keep it to myself all the time.
That's wonderful, man. That's wow. I love that. I love the way you put this stuff into just plain speak, and man, that's awesome. All right, host of the Holy Spirit's Curriculum of Joy, Wanako Oberhuber. Did I get it again?
Yes,
All
Wanako
right.
Oberhuber.
Beautiful. All right. Beautiful. All right. Sir, thank you for being on the show today and for sharing everything you did and, putting all of this out to all of my listeners so that they can take it all in and try and put it back out themselves. I love it. Thank you very much for being on here today.
You're very welcome.
Thanks. Folks, this has been another episode of the Power Man podcast. Some unique messaging, but by the same token, a lot of the things that we say very often. And so I'm going to close with just a few statements that Wanako has said and that I say a lot too, and that I know you have heard. And I want to just drive them home for you. You have value. You're worth it. All of this that we do every day is for you, so that you have the tools you need to be better tomorrow than you are today. And you know what? I'm just really, really grateful to be here and to be delivering this message with my guest today. You are worth it. You just got to believe it. Until next time.